I'm going to keep this straightforward because I know a lot of you sit on the fence when a premium-priced monitor pops up in your feed. The question isn't does it look cool, but will it actually improve the games I play, the movies I watch, and the work I do without draining my wallet for features I'll never use? If you're curious about the HP OMEN Transcend D32, the link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. In the next few minutes I'll walk through the real-world experience of this 31.5-inch OLED panel, point out where the hype lines up with daily use and where it falls short, and help you decide if it belongs on your desk or if you should keep scrolling. First off, let's talk about the core promise of any OLED gaming display: deep blacks, instant pixel response, and a picture that stays vivid from the darkest shadows to the brightest highlights. The D32 delivers on that front because OLED panels naturally turn off individual pixels, giving you a contrast ratio that feels practically infinite. In practice, that means when you drop into a dark hallway in a first-person shooter, enemies don't blend into a murky gray, they stand out with crisp edges, which can actually shave off reaction time if you're that competitive. For HDR movies, the HDR10 support and Visa Display HDR True Black 400 certification push the brightness up just enough to make fireworks pop without washing out the darker scenes. The contrast is where the 1500:1 spec becomes tangible. You'll notice the difference immediately compared to a typical LCD, especially in games with nighttime environments or cinema content with heavy shadow detail. Now, the 240Hz refresh rate is another headline that draws a lot of attention. On paper it sounds like overkill, but the real question is whether you can actually hit those frame rates and if the monitor can keep up without introducing artifacts. With an AMD FreeSync Premium Pro module, the D32 synchronizes to your GPU's output and eliminates tearing even when you're pushing 180 frames per second in a fast-paced title. I ran a couple of recent releases Cyberpunk 2077 and Valorant at 1440p scaled from the native 4K, and the monitor handled the high frame count smoothly. The higher refresh rate becomes most noticeable in competitive shooters, the mouse cursor feels smoother, and the motion blur is virtually gone thanks to OLED's sub-millisecond response. If you're a casual gamer who mostly plays at 60 frames per second, the extra 240Hz ceiling won't hurt, but you won't notice the full benefit unless your hardware can consistently deliver those high frame rates. Connectivity is another practical aspect. The D32 packs a DisplayPort, an HDMI 2.1 input, and a USB-C port that carries video, data, and power. For a desk that already has a high-end graphics card, the DisplayPort gives you the full 4K at 240Hz bandwidth without any compression. The HDMI is useful if you occasionally hook the monitor up to a console like the PS5, which can push 4K at 120Hz, still a step down from the monitor's max, but plenty for smooth gaming. The USB-C is a nice touch for laptop users. You can plug a Thunderbolt-compatible laptop, charge it, and drive the monitor with a single cable, which reduces desk clutter. In my own setup, the USB-C became the primary connection for my workstation, letting me switch between gaming and productivity without juggling cables. Let's talk about who should actually consider spending on this machine. If you're a competitive gamer with a GPU that can regularly push well above 120 frames per second at 1440p, the combination of OLED contrast and 240Hz refresh makes sense. The visual clarity will give you an edge in spotting enemies, and the high refresh will make your motions feel more fluid. Streamers who want a monitor that can double as a high-quality webcam backdrop also benefit. OLED's True Blacks make green screen work look cleaner, and the 4K resolution provides a crisp canvas for any on-screen graphics you overlay. On the other hand, if you're primarily a console player, a movie watcher, or a professional who works mainly with static documents and spreadsheets, the D32 might feel like a bit of an overinvestment. The OLED panel is prone to a phenomenon called burn-in if you leave static UI elements like a HUD or a taskbar on the screen for extremely long periods. HP includes built-in pixel shift and logo dimming features, but they're more of a mitigation than a guarantee. For users who keep the same window maximized for 8-hour workdays, a high-end IPS panel could be a safer bet. Likewise, if your GPU can't push more than 60 frames per second at 4K, you won't be leveraging the 240Hz capability, and you'll end up paying a premium for a spec you can't use. Now onto the practical weaknesses that often get lost in the spec sheet. The first is price. OLED monitors sit at the higher end of the market, and the D32 is no exception. You're paying for the panel technology and the high refresh engine, but if you compare it to a comparable 1440p 165Hz IPS monitor, the price gap is significant. Second, the brightness.